because if it's I have no problem with other people outside of our school district participating in the play, but I think it should be first come, first served to all of our scholars within the district. The second thing is, after hearing from several teachers, whether it's chorus or band, that a lot of times, and maybe the resources are there and everybody's just not aware, but money's for them to purchase sheet music. So I think that we need to advertise Dr. Simmons and Dr. Taylor and Mr. Jones to our fine arts departments, chorus, band, and drama, to let them know that resources are available to them because they're provided within the budget, and those are the things that we vote on. And I'm sure every member of this body supports the arts, right? And just hearing that there was a fee that they had to pay and, being able to offset some of the costs, I think that we as a board, we can continue to help our scholars in many different avenues, but especially financially, that they're doing a great job with the productions that they are providing, not only to our school district, but to our community as well. And so we just need to make sure that we are advertising it so that they are aware.
Agree.
We can have access all you want, but they have to be aware of the opportunity to gain the access.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Taylor, you want to add anything to that?
If I may. And so Dr. Simmons has made this request known to me, and so the $50,000 request here is being made from Ashley Crawford, Director of Special Programs. This in particular is coming from a need that she saw, as Byron has mentioned, to replace some instruments. In addition to that, our CARES funds it uniquely allows us the opportunity to provide some resources for fine arts in a way that other funding streams did not. And to say that differently, in the past, federal programs or title dollars could not be spent for fine arts, gifted, et cetera. And so we have an allocation for resources for fine arts. In addition to that, we have had a fine arts lead teacher for some years. That is Miss Jenny Wilson. Yeah, and so she definitely...
Is she Jordan Hill?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. So she serves as our district lead teacher, and she's one teacher, does a wonderful job, was here when students performed for the board. And so I definitely take this concern back to her as we look for ways that we can innovatively allocate those funds, in particular directly to students.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor, and thank you so much, Dr. Simmons.
I also have a request. Thank you, Mr. Brown. As a former educator and one that went to as many programs as I could, and as a middle school teacher, when I went to the Beaverbrook play, The Little Mermaid, a couple of 3 weeks ago, I'm requesting that we invest in a sound system, perhaps where schools can share the resource, the headphones where you have the little microphone, because I felt really bad for the parents that came to see their child perform. I couldn't hear. I know they couldn't hear. And this is not it's just something that if we're going to put on these productions, then we need to be sure that our schools and our students have everything they do to put on a first-class production. So perhaps we can buy 2 sets of those that elementary schools can share. Perhaps we can buy 2 sets that the middle schools can share. Perhaps we can buy a set for each high school, because I know that the high schools probably do more as far as chorus and band and that type thing. But I felt really bad for myself, because I couldn't hear those children, and I enjoy going to things like that. So if you'll mention that to Ms. Wilson, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Jones, I got.
Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, I just want to get some clarification on this purchasing procurement specialist. And you know more about purchasing and school finance than I probably know, but I want to make sure that we capture something if this person would be able to set up a PPA agreement, a purchasing power agreement, where not only purchasing for this system, but is it possible that they can collaborate with other systems where they're purchasing the same thing that we're purchasing, and we can get it at a lot better price? Is that something that this position will?
Sure.
Will,
Yeah, for example, I'm making this up to answer your question. I didn't know you was going to ask me. So in terms of buying that software item, regardless of the funding source, I have went through and bid that out twice, myself and other districts. We already have an identifying acronym. Mr. Akins told me, and I can't remember the name. It's a national contract and things like that that we can buy off of and see what other districts have recently done a bid on and use that to our advantage. So yes, all of that will be rolled in and considered in that position. We're still developing the job description, just to be candid with you right now, but I've got a note, purchasing power agreement, is what you're talking about.
Okay. Last thing, I just didn't see it in the list of considerations. I know we discussed about a possible, we never came to a conclusion, and this, I guess it's a question for Dr. Simmons, on a safety/truancy officer. Can you kind of help me out? I didn't see it on here. That's something that we'll discuss or whatever.
Yes, sir. You know, I do have an interest in a truancy officer. I do have an interest in a safety and security officer or coordinator, director, however you see that. But I'm more interested in trying to figure out where the schools and their respective requests are going to land. My hope is that what the schools are asking for comes under what we're projecting. You know, the notion around the truancy officer, you do recognize, board members, that we have our truancy task force. What I'm trying to be able to do is put someone into the community during school hours to push, pull, meet with parents prior to the task force, follow back up. With regards to the safety and security, that one's probably a little bit harder this year. I do like it for the 23-24 year. I'm just still trying to work which one of those do I get the greatest bang for the buck. We've talked about, you know, how we could best move the director of safety and security and what that would mean for our current staff. I don't believe we would have any unintended impact if we added a truancy officer. But where you see miscellaneous school requests and where you see up here the new enterprise resource platform, the ERP, I'm hoping that those figures and those positions will be able to reside in those two slots. I'll continue to work with staff as well as you. I appreciate you making that comment. We'll get that added because it does need to be a part of the mix that's more clearly defined, but it is in my thinking. It's just not clearly stated on the board. But I haven't lost sight of either of those positions.
Well, I appreciate it, and I know the community and our scholars and staff would, especially the safety piece, looking at current, you know, environment and things that happens. We just don't need to be reactive. We need to be a little proactive in addressing that. We know it's already a problem, and I just think it's just a matter of time that we're going to have to do like the system you came from, Clayton County and others, as far as how they address safety in their schools.
Yes, sir.
And that's something that we really need to keep on our radar.
We will, the next time that the board hears from Mr. Jones, you will see where that resides. I will certainly take tonight's feedback as well as your feedback collectively to make sure that it's a part of the recipe so that whatever budget we bring back before this board for its final adoption, it represents, like I've always said, the needs of the schools and the aspirations of this board. So again, I think tonight's the first iteration of that. I regret that I didn't clearly get that marked out for you, but it is part of my thinking.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, let me run through the rest of these slides right quick. Special revenue, and I alluded to this earlier, $28.6 million. Basically, that is including 2 years of a American Rescue Plan allocation, which is better known as ESSER 3, and a CARES 2 budget allocation, which makes that number $28.6 million. Normally, your grant funds would only be $12 to $14 million, but that's the reason for that. Just as a reminder, we're using some of the CARES 2 to offset school administration expenditures. Nutrition fund, just to reiterate what we talked about earlier, we're going to adopt the FY23 budget with the CEP community eligibility provision, which will basically mean Dr. Wheeler's revenue will be similar to this year. It will be increased versus last year. He will be able to still have a la carte sales, which is buy-as-you-go type items that the children can buy and adults. Adult sales will still remain. He does have increased costs for inflation, along with the implementation of the salary study will cause his labor costs to increase. So he does have increased expenditures that are more in line with his revenue, but once we do the personnel salary increases, that's expected to go up. As a reminder, the debt service fund will be budgeted at zero. All debt was extinguished with SPLOST 5 in October of 2020. Pay-as-you-go is what we're doing now. So, again, you've seen the receipts of our SPLOST 6, how it continues to trend upward. So we've been able to continue doing that without borrowing money. Capital projects funds, I listed SPLOST 3, 4, 5, and 6 with some projects that we intend to do. I had a conversation with Mr. Akins that helped verify some of this data. It's on tab 10 in your budget book as well. This is just a quick recap of that. And so in summary, budget for all funds is supplemented by CARES $2. We went through the proposed step increases, the calendar, the budget priorities. The plan of action is always going to be continue to review and recommend any changes based on feedback tonight. We're on Tuesday, May 17th. I'm about to ask you to please adopt the tentative budget on the second bullet today. We'll cross that out, put it in the newspaper Friday, May 20th. I actually went to a conference the other day, and they're talking about that we're not required to put that in the newspaper anymore. We just have to put it on the website. But I believe we're going to go ahead and do it anyway, just for transparency. We'll make that decision or change next year. So look for that in Friday's newspaper. And then Tuesday, June 7th, I'm planning on coming back to your regular board meeting to have an update of this document. And then we're going to push to June 21st, the actual adoption. It's off the screen here, but the adoption of the final budget. So once we get that done, if you're all in agreement with that, that'll put us on our stage to implementation starting July 1. Is there any questions still remaining before I read this action memo?
The only question, I don't know if it's so much a question, but obviously the document that you just went through, each of those line items and different things, last year you were able to let us know this was being paid for with CARES, this is being paid for with such and such. Will that be updated and have that on the 7th?
Anticipate June 7th. We just need further dialogue. The good thing about this meeting is there's 3 weeks to June 7th, not 2 weeks. So I got 2 weeks before I got to get this document to Ms. Ray on a Tuesday for the next one. So we got a little more time than normal. So
Okay.
That'll help us out there.
And then, obviously, we already knew, we have the allotment process, we're back to normal. I read that within the report versus how we put a freeze on it the previous year. But we have made some decisions based upon having the CARES funds, and we need to get those FTEs back in line to do that. Is there any talk, is there any discussion farther down the road, we're okay for another year, of what that's going to look like and how we're going to make up that $5-6 million?
So CARES 2, again, there's 3 ESSER, and I'm not calling CARES 3 anymore, that's ARP. So CARES 2 is the $14.6 million, which has 2 years of plans to divert salaries. FY23's approval is based on the second year of diversion of salaries. The plan is to use school administration again because that does not affect maintenance of equity and things that we have tests that we have to meet on. That's the plan, but the state, I think Dr. Simmons has educated y'all, they mean well, but rules change as we go. So if that can't happen, we're going to pull school administration back in, and that's why your school administration line is higher in this budget on the summary page, and we'll offset a teacher salary range over there to still do that process. So in the budget book, it may be a little bit confusing to you. Going to ARP, it's a 2-year budget with a 1-year carryover, the ARP funds. This is year 1, year 2 next year, and then FY24 would be the 3rd and final year of ARP, the $32 million spending.
Okay, that helps me.
All right, y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. The superintendent recommends the approval of the FY23 tentative budget with appropriations for the following funds, which are listed in the summary document: General Fund, Special Revenue Fund, School Nutrition Fund, Debt Services Fund, Capital Projects Fund. School districts have to have these budgets approved by July 1. This is the background of your action memo. If we don't get this done as far as the official adoption in June, then we have to have a continuing spending resolution, but we're not planning to do that. I've shared with you about the document will be in the Griffin Daily News on Friday. So with that being said, it is recommended that the Griffin Spalding Board of Education approve the FY23 tentative budget with appropriations for the following funds, which are listed in the summary document: General Fund, Special Revenue Fund, School Nutrition Fund, Debt Services Fund, and Capital Projects Fund.
Any other questions, board members?
Can you repeat that, Mr. Jones? I'm just kidding.
Mr. Jones, number one, I just wanted to thank you on behalf of the board for the work that you and your teams have put in place. I feel very informed. I also wanted to thank Dr. Simmons for that. I think the public has no idea with regard to how a school system puts a budget together, but it's pretty intriguing to me, so I just wanted to say publicly thank you and your team. All right, do we have a motion?
So move.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor with regard to Mr. Jones, please raise your right hand. All right, 5-0. Thank you. Now you can breathe. Board members, our final tally is for information items. You have your monthly facilities and maintenance report, your construction renovation progress summary number, and your school year 22-23 district initiatives that Dr. Taylor has provided for us. And I do not believe that we are going into executive session. Is that correct? We are not.
Okay.
So with that said, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjourning, please raise your right hand.